Hello there, welcome back to the channel and the next part in my series exploring the rivalry between the Klingon and Romulan empires. This time we're returning to the Romulan Star Empire and we're going to explore a vessel which we didn't see much of, we don't know much about, but we're going to explore what we do know about this ship. It was encountered in the movie Star Trek Nemesis, a bit of a divisive movie, and let me know in the comments below what you think of that film, because me, I'm on the fence about it. I do actually kind of like it, but I can see why people didn't like it. I know there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that caused a lot of problems and tensions, particularly between the director and the cast and the studio and pretty much everybody else. But I think we can all agree the ship designs from that movie are exquisite. This vessel in particular, the Valdor class Warbird or Valdor type Warbird, which is a distinction I'll get to in a minute, is a beautiful ship. But before we get started, please like, share, subscribe and comment down below what you think about the film, what you think about the ship, and another vessel you'd like me to cover, because as I keep saying in the series, I'm already aware of it, I'm not going to cover every ship just because the series will go on forever. And also there's a bit of an imbalance between the number of ships we know about from the Klingons and the Romulans. But what we do know about the Romulans, the Warbird, known as the Valdor type. The Valdor type was encountered in 2379. It was encountered by the USS Enterprise NCC 1701E under the command of Captain Jean-Luc Picard. He was summoned into Romulan space on a diplomatic mission to meet with the new Romulan Praetor after some kind of internal kerfuffle with the Romulans, as often happens, and the previous Senate was assassinated. Now, I'm not going to go into too many spoilers. In case you haven't seen the movie, because you should make your own determination, it is a bit of an old film now, so there'll be a few spoilers here, but basically the Praetor isn't the man they expected him to be, and he is actually from a race known as the Reman, not the Romulan. That's sort of course he isn't actually Reman, but all the same, he was tricked into coming in there. They're not really interested in peace or diplomacy, they merely wanted Picard for a reason. Realizing the destruction that the new Praetor Shinzon was planning to unleash on the Quadrant and likely the fallout for the Romulans decided that they had backed the wrong horse, so to speak, metaphorically, and decided to deal with him. Now, Shinzon took his Warbird, the Scimitar, after the Enterprise and began to engage it in combat, disabling the Enterprise with the intention of capturing Picard. Picard then shits it, already realizing that he'd outgunned, when two Romulan Warbirds of a new type turn up, but these vessels, instead of backing Shinzon, as Shinzon was wary as to why they were there as well, actually decided to render assistance to the Enterprise, much to Picard's delight. However, the Scimitar was able to make light work of them, but we have to bear in mind that although superficially it may seem like these vessels were less structurally sound and capable of weathering damage than the Enterprise, one of them did take a hell of a lot of punishment and survive while the other one was destroyed. But bear in mind that Shinzon was trying to capture the Enterprise, not destroy it. He had no such issue with the Romulans. He hated the Romulans. It's likely if he'd have stayed in charge, the Romulan Empire would have turned into the Reman Empire in all probability, given enough time. So Shinzon, not the best leader for the Romulan Empire. But what we can tell about the Warbirds from the short engagement, some things we do have to guess. Now, the reason I call it the Valdor type is the first vessel we encounter is the Valdor. That is under the command of Commander Denatra. She offers assistance. Now, under human tradition, the first vessel of a class lends its name to the class. This is what happens with Starfleet. USS Constitution class, USS Defiant class, USS Intrepid class, etc. But we don't know that the Valdor was the first ship. We also don't know that the Romulans maintain the same tradition as humans doing the same thing. So we don't know that. We don't actually know what the ship was called. There are beta canon sources such as Star Trek Online that do give it a name, but most people simply know it as the Valdor class, or as I call it, the Valdor type, because it's not actually got an official designation. But things we do know for certain about the ship: it is armed with disruptors, which seemingly fire in pulse form, but as we've seen with previous vessels such as the Disruptors class, Romulan disruptors are variable. They can fire in beam, pulse, or short, protracted rapid fire bursts as well. It has at least one forward torpedo launcher, but we can probably assume it has more, but it at least had one that was able to fire 4 torpedoes at once. This was similar to the Galaxy class starship, which is one forward torpedo launcher, which seems small for a ship of its size, could actually fire 5 torpedoes simultaneously, giving the ship a massive tactical edge over its enemies, despite being a bit of a glass cannon, much like the Romulans. Now, the Valdor probably could fire its disruptors in beam form. It probably had other torpedoes, but we don't know for certain. It was defended by shields and had, of course, the standard Romulan cloaking device, and it also carried auxiliary craft, which we know nothing about, but I am going to actually cover Romulan auxiliary craft in an upcoming video, as I will also be covering the Scimitar in an upcoming video soon. But the Warbird itself, it had a wingspan of about 900 meters and a body length roughly comparable to that of the Sovereign class starship of the Federation, such as the USS Enterprise, which was almost 700 meters, but I think the Warbird topped out at being a little bit longer. But bear in mind, because of its wingspan, it was wider than it was long. The vessel, of course, had other Romulan technology such as transporters, replicators, and those sorts of things. The bridge is the only thing we saw internally, however, which was a relatively rounded bridge with control consoles to the left and right of the commander, with a small console right in front of the commander, seemingly for their use, as well as some additional consoles behind them. We don't know what the rest of the ship was like, or if this was a multi-tiered bridge like on the Disruptors class, but it doesn't seem to have been, because this vessel was massively streamlined. This vessel was built with lessons that were learnt from the Dominion War by the Federation, by the Romulans, the Klingons. Everyone basically took away from that war. We need better ships, because the Romulans and everyone else really had it handed to them by the Dominion. So this was a response to streamline it. The Disruptors class was a bit of a glass cannon. It was it was like this. Comparing these two ships is like comparing a M1 Abrams tank and a fighter bomber. They're not exactly the same style. They're both weapons of war, but they're very different weapons of war. The Valdor type was extremely fast and maneuverable, whereas the Disruptors was more of a heavy hitter. It was a boxer. It was a brawler. This ship is built for speed and maneuvering and probably sacrificed some armour. It should be noted that in general aesthetics, of course, it can maintain the general bird motif. It was probably built from the same alloys and materials as other Romulan Warbirds, and barring any other information, we can assume it was also powered by a forced quantum singularity, basically an artificial black hole, which is what also powered a Disruptors class Warbird. As we don't know any different, we've got to assume that the Romulans are maintaining to use the same type of power source, otherwise we're setting up an entire sub-industry to power the ship separate to how they power the primary vessels of their navy. It makes more sense to continue using the same power source, nothing inherently wrong with it, maybe they made it more efficient. Other than that, the sort of negative space design of the Disruptors class has been mostly abandoned, but there are elements of it in the basic hull geometry of the Valdor type. It's still there, but it doesn't seem to serve the same sort of function as it does on the Warbirds, on the Disruptors class Warbirds, so I'm not entirely sure what's going on there. However, it does still have many legacy designs of earlier Romulan ships, feathering design on the armour plating of the hull. It's got a green coloured hull, which we can assume is just paint, but you never know, it could actually be the colour of the alloy, who knows. And yeah, as I said, we do see two of these ships absolutely get owned by the Scimitar, but whether or not that was because he was unleashing hell on them, bear in mind the Scimitar was an immensely advanced and powerful starship, or whether these vessels are a little bit tactically inferior to a Sovereign class, I'll leave it up to you to decide. Again, in the comments below, fight it out. Personally, I think this is a beautiful design, a very elegant design, and very fitting, and very aesthetically very Romulan. So, all things considered, beautiful ship. And with that said, that is the Valdor type Warbird encountered in 2379. I just want to take this moment to thank you for watching that video. If you liked what you saw, please check out my social links in the description box below to Instagram and Twitter and others, and also is down there a link to my Patreon page where you can support this channel and the others as I try to grow this franchise and do this more regularly. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you for watching, and bye bye.